and welcome to the WhatCulture Wrestling Roundtable podcast. I'm Adam Wilborn from WhatCulture, joined by the Dadley Boyz of WhatCulture, Michael Hamflett and Michael Sidgwick, to discuss all the big wrestling talking points going on. If you're a fan of this sort of thing, before we get started, by the way, make sure you subscribe to WhatCulture Wrestling on iTunes for daily podcasts. We review pay-per-views, Raw, SmackDown. We have big wrestler interviews. We've got a wrestler interview with Taz coming up later this week. We have more roundtable discussions just like this one. And on Fridays, we have a roundup of the week, complete with a bloody good quiz, of course, via WrestleCulture. But gents, lots to discuss this week. Lots of WWE stuff to discuss, but I want to start with something that is completely unrelated to WWE, but also kind of blending into it, which is UFC. Obviously, a lot of talk about what happened this weekend with Khabib Nurmagomedov and Conor McGregor and the post-fight brawl that happened. So my question to you two is, does UFC do WWE better than WWE?
Certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly does. Like, the whole fallout from UFC 229, the way I've framed it is that this was like the very best of the WWF in 1997. You've got the Stone Cold, Steve Austin, Bret Hart double turn where Conor McGregor somehow contrived to get sympathy on the back of it. Khabib's basically taken his whole idea of professionalism too far into the realm of the unprofessional, and that's not the only comparison, because you've got the Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels feud where basically you've got one guy who's charismatic but horrible, and another guy who's so fiercely protective of being a technician in the purity of the sport that the rest of it's passing him by. And you've got a promoter, Dana White, who's basically being Vince McMahon and just saying, just do whatever you need to do to promote this fight. I don't care what the personal fallout is. Just do what you need to do to promote this fight.
From a promotional point of view, like Dana White here is Vince McMahon when he's got Steve Austin and Mike Tyson in front of him. From an awareness point of view, this was incredible. Like, I'm the lone wrestling friend to a lot of people I know, and everybody was getting in touch with me yesterday to ask me about something that wasn't even wrestling related. This broke through to the mainstream, featuring, as Cedric points out, like two tangible money drawing stars. This is everything pro wrestling was based on and now struggles to be. And what we're going to get out of this? More of the same. Like, a match was conclusively concluded, and they're going to do it all over again off the back of what we saw afterwards. It's incredible. It's old-fashioned promotion done in 2018.
As a fan of both sports, and also working here and seeing all the people who say, you know, harking back to that attitude era of WWF, of all the, you know, really pushing the boundaries, in most cases quite almost too far.
Yeah.
You have this here. You have obviously two fantastic sportsmen. Khabib completely outclassed Conor McGregor in that actual fight. In the build to it, I mean, we talk about some of our favourite WWE promos over the years. The build to it, they've got something which they initially said was one of the most heinous things to ever happen in the sport, which is Conor obviously throwing the dolly at the bus when Khabib was on it and all the other fighters were on it a while back. They've used that here. They've obviously got everyone's into such a heightened state of emotions. The fans are banned from the initial press conference. Then all the subsequent goings on after that, the weigh-ins, it all starts kicking off there. And then, yeah, you have this definitive ending to the fight. I don't think any Conor McGregor fans could argue that any other decision could have gone his way in those 4 rounds. He was completely destroyed by Khabib's amazing wrestling. It finishes, like you say, that seems to be the sort of period, the end to this feud. And then Khabib jumps into the crowd, attacks Conor's wrestling coach.
Magic.
And I get a feeling, as much as Dana is, you know, slating everything that happened there.
Because he has to. Because he has to.
And saying all these things, if they ever book Khabib Conor 2, that footage is getting used again, isn't it?
The magic of how Dana White seems to operate with UFC is that on one hand, he's the business professional that is aware of what he has to say, and on the other is a company that just seems unafraid of the hype that someone like Conor McGregor brings. Like, the bus attack is the sort of thing that within WWE, if there was anything remotely real life like that, it'd be nowhere near the product, and we'd be talking about it saying, oh, I wonder if that'll get mentioned, I wonder if that. It appeared in videos for UFC. They just stare into it. You know, they somehow manage to have the cake and eat it, I think, because you've got, I've read this weekend, the sort of the serious sporting, sort of analysis of UFC being that this is unacceptable, it's the ugly face of the sport. It is.
Is there a clean face to this sport?
That's exactly the point. I think in reality, this is a pretty dirty game as well, so they can play this if they want.
The funny thing is we've talked for a while about, with Conor's charisma, he's ready-made to make that move into WWE. Not necessarily akin to Ronda, because Ronda just brought her skills across, but his promotional skills, as you say, would be ideal for just giving him a microphone and seeing what happens in WWE. He almost doesn't need that now. He's got that in the UFC.
Yeah. Absolutely. WWE would ruin Conor McGregor. Like, completely wouldn't let themselves be ruined. But I think we talk about whether UFC does wrestling better than WWE, and I think it's a strange question because obviously it's not a work. The conspiracy theorists are out saying, it must be a work. It just happens to be a one-off, once-in-a-lifetime, stranger-than-fiction sort of deal. But WWE can do something to emulate this. And by that, I mean just remove the scripting, like let unhinged things happen, like with the Hart and Michael stuff again. I think they can take a lesson, steal some buzz back by just giving some of the guys some autonomy. Because if you look at someone like Habib and the way that he just completely lost control and lashed out, the guy being provoked over and over and over again, and that spilled over. And if you're someone like Bobby Lashley getting completely verbally incinerated by Sami Zayn, and then you just come back and say, you're a funny guy, sticks and stones may break my bones, but your words can't hurt me, and it's pathetic. And if they just had these guys act with a degree of just the edge that the UFC guys have, then you might have a product that isn't laughable.
I think the problem is, though, like, WWE are always behind the eight ball on this. When something like this happens in UFC, invariably you see on an episode of Monday Night Raw or SmackDown somebody like pay tribute to it because they're in such adoration of this product that they're not a part of. I could, like, very realistically see someone like Leo Rush tonight hop the top rope in a red shirt and like wail on Kevin Owens from behind, like that guy did that was going for Conor, as a little bit of a nod. We've seen Punk and Bryan do it in their matches, things like that. Whenever there's a WWE guy ringside or sort of like by the octagon at a UFC show, like the WWE tweet it from their own account. Look who's at their show. Like, they now feel like they're being touched by the stardust of UFC. And it's amazing that it used to be the other way around. It's amazing that 20 years ago, they were bringing in Ken Shamrock as a bit of co-promotion. We can make a star out of one of your cage fighting goobers. Like how that's turned around is remarkable.
It's worked the opposite way in the past. I mean, you look at someone like Chael Sonnen, who's arguably, there wouldn't be a Conor McGregor without Chael Sonnen. He was one of the best trash talkers in the early days of MMA. And he openly admits he takes elements from WWE, and he discusses face and heel dynamics when it comes to the UFC. Why it doesn't necessarily work the other way, and when they bring back, for example, Brock Lesnar, they go, bloody hell, tone it down a bit here. After he destroys John Cena's face with that harsh elbow. And
but look who Chael looked to. He looked to Billy Graham and Dusty Rhodes. He wasn't hearing what Seth Rollins said and he was using that, in his promos. He wasn't looking at like the guys of today. He was looking at like the foundational figures of pro wrestling and pro wrestling smack talk. And there's so little that you would theoretically rob from like the product now versus what you would take then.
Every time Conor gets in the news, I just completely feed on his YouTube best of videos because the guy's a complete star and I enjoy watching stars, which is why I'm a bit down on the WWE product at the minute. And there's one where Conor McGregor gets a solid gold pocket watch out of his jacket and says, 3 people died making this. And that's just Ric Flair.
Yeah.
That's Ric Flair. And that's the reason why UFC gets it, is because UFC's pro wrestling, WWE sports entertainment, and I think pro wrestling just beats sports entertainment every single day of the week for me.
Ric Flair's line of "my shoes cost more than your house." There's only one fight you can think of that would ever get away with saying a line like that.
Yeah.
It's Conor McGregor.
It's Conor McGregor.
Yeah.
so let's hope WWE can take elements of this into their. But do you think it's not going to happen until we see a change at the very, very top?
Like, they can't have Bobby Lashley come out and call someone a mad backwards CU. Yeah, I'm not going to say the thing, even though, but they could take the spirit of it and just let them, have a little bit of a backbone and a bit of improvisational skill to make you think, this guy's a star worth investing in. They can take a little bit of the spirit from UFC for me.
Is it worth adapting the model? I know they have done this partially in the past with press conferences for WWF events. I'm not saying that they need to completely alter that. They do their own thing.
No,
do they need to steal elements of that?
I think they should rob it completely
Press conferences
wholesale.
work in New Japan well.
Yeah.
As well, like they're suited up and they cut these promos.
They feel like athletes.
Yeah, we know they're promos and we know that they're cutting these like sort of loosely planned promos on people, but like it feels real. It feels authentic.
Yeah, it feels like it's so easy to buy into a match as opposed to the X guy walks into the ring, Y guy interrupts, general manager creates a match for right now, which is such like a turgid. Yeah, it's rubbish. I think they should go the press conference route.
They acknowledge it always goes wrong.
Yeah, I mean, if it's eating itself now, then just blurt it out and just go to press conferences.
I think the last thing that I'll say on this as well is that there's so many Attitude Era guys that have gotten into UFC over later years because it reflects the industry they were once in as wrestlers. If you listen to anyone from the Attitude Era talk about the locker room, it's a shark tank. It's a fake sport where guys are competing as hard as they would in any real sport to be the best in it. They'll bite each other's heads off. They'll stab each other in the front and the back to get ahead. That visceral competitive element was apparent on television, and it's missing now. Because it's those guys that Vince McMahon once infamously called entitled millennials. He hates them. He hates them. So he shows them no respect through his product. There was probably a time where he kind of feared the action, but he wanted it to explode a little bit. He wanted there to be that little bit of that testiness. I'm not saying you want to endanger fans and members of the public and people on buses.
Yeah, it's better.
But
than
there is a middle ground that tiptoes closer to that than what we see every week.
Yeah.
It's amazing to think, and we've said this before, the UFC are capable of making these megastars, and they can't control what happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, WWE, it's there in black and white, how it's there, and then they still mess this up. Anyway, let us know your thoughts. You can tweet us at WhatCultureWWE on Twitter. We're going to move on because, as well as the UFC, there was apparently a WWE event this weekend. WWE Super Show-Down from Melbourne, Australia. First of all, just generally, what did you make of the show?
So I'm going to be very, very critical of 2 or 3 key areas from the show, but I actually quite enjoyed it. It's the second long show, including SummerSlam, where I feel like they're getting the pacing of these big events so much better than they were.
Hell in a Cell was done well too, in that regard.
Then they're not feeling like they're dragging, which tells me that I must have some investment in the stars, in the matches. There was a couple of things that were rushed needlessly so, and a couple of things that most definitely weren't. But overall, I think I enjoyed the event. I just wish there wasn't a couple of things that I was so angry about.
Can we get to the main event? I want to talk about the main event.
Yeah, because that's the thing to be most angry about.
Let's just quickly talk about our highlights. I think Buddy Murphy, generally, people are saying that's one of the best moments of the entire show. Yeah. Ronda Rousey, yet again, stealing the show was absolutely fantastic. In terms of the other side of the coin, we'll get to the main event, but for me as a fan, I was so confused by the finish to The Miz, Daniel Bryan. The question I wanted to ask you about that is, does that finish help anyone?
No. Not whatsoever. I had no clue what was going on. No one in the crowd reacted. And yeah, it was just so confusing. And one of the reasons why I hated this is because in recent years, WWE frame a legitimate wrestling hold, like a quick fire pin, is a fluke. And it's no, he's just been tactically outwitted. You know what I mean? It's it really confuses me how something legitimate is now it's just the coward's way out. What?
For one more match as well.
Yeah.
How I put it in Ups and Downs, cheap plug, is that for years, WWE had a situation, 2 Royal Rumbles were ruined, and there were near riots over Daniel Bryan not getting a title shot. They found a way to give him one to complete silence. That was what that finish did. That how have they contrived to reach that point with Daniel Bryan? I don't know if it was it seems to me like a story that's going to run. There's maybe going to have been a curfew that we weren't aware of the building because it's certainly not network time.
I think they're just inept.
It seemed too weird.
They're just too inept. Too inept.
Let's let this bleed into the main event because for me, watching that, and when you said that to me today, when you said, I think they had a curfew, they had to keep something short. Cut 5 minutes out of that main event.
Cut 10.
Cut 20. I'm not joking.
Previewing it could be, I said it. Oh, this is surely just going to be a big old spot fest. Obviously, they make it no GQ on the fly on the night, and you go, well, just hit the big moves and people will forget about it. They tried to do this long, dragged out fight where, as I said before, if you add up all the ages, including the men who were ringside, they were 200 years old. Madness.
It was insulting.
It was arrogant, really, really arrogant. I thought Taker looked worse at WrestleMania 30 than he did here. That's an exaggeration, but not by that much. And I thought it was just such an arrogant layout. The way, everyone just wanted those 4 guys to play the hits. And this reminded me of those terrible acoustic versions of Blood Pump and rock songs where they slow everything down, all the dramatic heft is gone, and it was just this toothless, rubbish, arrogant thing.
To play devil's advocate, some people would have said this was great, this is fun, this is nostalgia. We're probably going to be getting, one would assume, DX versus the Brothers of Destruction at Crown Jewel. What do you say to that? Because some people said it was fun and nostalgic and brought all those memories back of like you say, the greatest hits, and other people said this is kind of taken away from to the detriment of everyone else on this show. It's kind of depressing to see where they are now, and maybe they should just sort of, like you said, have kept it short, wrapped it up, and gone home.
I want to get drunk on nostalgia. I don't want to get inebriated and be sick
and get the hangover all at the same time.
I think that's the difference. Like, I want to get the buzz and the pop of nostalgia. And to be honest, I get that through an entrance or two and 7 or 8 minutes. If you're going to have that match, if you're going to have a greatest hits match, just speed the whole thing up. Just go into the crowd and do the brawl from X7, do the tombstone kick out that you got from 25.
That was ridiculous, by the way.
For them to like put that spot in at like the 15, 16 minute mark with another 10 to go was so insulting, because it's like, this is paying tribute to like some phenomenal pro wrestling that people hold so dear at themselves, and it's being used as like a nostalgia spot. No better or worse than Triple H chucking an elbow through a table. Like,
that was rubbish.
There was so much silliness that could have been compacted in, and nobody would have anything to complain about.
But why make the comparison to WrestleMania 25? It couldn't be further from WrestleMania 25. How poor and like slow and boring that match was. Like, why did it have to go half an hour? Like, Triple H is just such an arrogant bloke when he wants to be. It was
telling to me that this Australian crowd, who to be fair would be very excited to see these 4 people. Like, if they were at a house show in Newcastle, we would rush along and buy tickets.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Look, stars are stars are stars, right? However, like, it was telling to me that very early in the match, the fans were chanting, "This is awesome," when nothing that great had happened. I think it was because they were selling exhaustedly, as if a lot of stuff had happened, because they just looked knackered throughout. They are old men doing young men things at an old man's pace. So that's probably why fans were going, "This is awesome," because they were just so wrapped in like the excitement of seeing the stars that like there's like the biggest go home sign of all. Like, you've got them. You've got them from the moment you've walked out. So just give them some quick hits and get out of there, because like clearly, you know, like either matches have suffered elsewhere on the card, or like fans are made to suffer through the ones that are getting a bit sick, are getting a bit bored of seeing this. It was just the construction of it just felt all wrong.
My question would also be, would this partially be more justified if this was the end? But we know that this is, you know, with the conclusion, and we all knew when they were stood there and arms, you know, it almost a callback to the curtain call and what have you. I think I saw someone saying, you know, if you compare them, Triple H is in the exact same spot as he was when they did the curtain call in MSG, of course. Is it another one of those things where you go, this is just a means to an end to drag it out even more because we know they've got such a big payday coming at Crown Jewel?
Everything in WWE is a means to an end for a product that never has an end. So you kind of you're trapped with something like that. What worries me the most is how much like this has maybe exposed Shawn Michaels more than we needed. Like, I'd be very willing, as I'm sure we all would, to give him quite a wide berth if he'd barely been on television, but we've got all this deep-rooted love for him, and then he makes his comeback. I've seen 2 or 3 appearances now that have given me nothing but worry for seeing this return, and he's the guy out of all 4 of them that I'm relying on to carry it, and he's been retired 8 years.
Kane looked like an idiot in this as well. Just sort of like Shawn Michaels was bantering Taker off at every opportunity, just like sort of glowering at him across the ring, doing nothing, tiptoeing around the table.
Yeah.
Like, it was just
gesturing him to hit the chin music on camera. Like, it was sloppy, and it was, you know,
they're just too old for it.
This is where, again, I feel like you kind of have to put that caveat in and say, yeah, but for like some people, this was like a great opportunity to see the heroes. We all want to watch our heroes, but like, you want to see them for like 5 minutes. Like the gimmick battle royal, an entire battle royal of 20 old silly jokes.
That was better.
17.
That was 5 minutes. That was way better as well than this.
Yeah, and it was a far superior handling of nostalgia. Triple H and Undertaker should remember that, because they were wrestling each other on that same card. Like,
is there any way they resolve this at Crown Jewel to a satisfactory level for you two?
An 8-minute match.
Yeah.
8 minutes maximum. But I've got a feeling that Kane's just going to get the heat on Shawn Michaels for about that duration.
And considering they've got a triple threat there for the Universal Championship, what goes on last?
These guys.
These guys.
Yeah. And it probably ends with what we saw at the end of Super Showdown without the turn. Whoever wins or loses, all 4 in the ring.
Well, no, that's apparently going to get more.
Oh, I didn't even... Right, yeah.
No, the Survivor Series rumours that they're going to do the singles match or some kind of team variation. I mean, basically, DX can get, like, you know, when they bantered off CM Punk with all the arm round stuff at Survivor Series 2006, they're going to get some new star to, like, siphon the heat off and go out relevant again, guys. Something like that. It was just 27 minutes it went.
I think Shawn Michaels winning the Royal Rumble is my Adam Wilborn, Daniel Bryan, Miz WrestleMania thing. So if this somehow gets us there and he gets the taste for it and he thinks, actually, I do fancy this, I'll take your main event, thanks very much. Like that, and that alone would maybe justify everything we're going through now. But we will take criticism for this. I know for a fact we'll take criticism because I've seen it already in my own comment section for an article. There are some people like that blindly love all this, and maybe this services them, maybe, but I am keen to see the point in which that turns and they're like, especially with the Undertaker, because for me that happened years ago, but some people have given the Undertaker rope after rope after rope, and he continues to deliver performances like this, and I don't know when that sort of fan base turns to think, I don't want to watch this guy anymore. I don't want to watch him.
I don't want to feel sorry for the guy I was legitimately terrified of as a child. Like, I was there for the Taker debut. He was a terrifying presence, and then he got rubbish in the Attitude Era. But immediately before and after, New Generation, Ruthless Aggression, the guy was absolutely awesome. So he's gone from terrifying, formidable, to just this pure, deep respect. And now I just pity him because he looked pitiful out there.
Let's cheer ourselves up. Is John Cena's new finisher funny?
Nah.
No, and like, is this my age? Is this the fact that like I'm often tired by two children? Michael Sidgwick, you're in the same boat as me. Have we not got the tolerance and the patience for this kind of silliness? Or
Jackie Chan trained to do it.
So I hear, like, you know, he's doing a pose to promote a film and his hair's horrendous. And
that hair, we haven't got time
John
for that.
Cena is a guy that for so many years I was on that kind of like I was on the defensive for him. And I feel like I was there when still there was a lot of people that were critical towards him. I personally believe CM Punk is a favourite of so many, and I personally believe that John Cena is the best person to share the ring with CM Punk. People have their career opponents, and for me, he brought the best out in Punk. He made him look like a star because he was on John Cena's level in a way that I don't believe anybody else ever did. And where that guy's gone for what he's done for the past 2 years, like he's doing this Undertaker retirement tour in accelerated form because the manner in which he treats guys that he owes so much back. Everybody laid down for John Cena, and he's giving nothing back. And there's another point. Everybody laid down to the attitude adjustment, which now requires it to be hit and then have the opponent stand up in order. They sell the move that has pinned everybody by standing up to take a back fist in the face. Think about the logic flaw there of who we've seen had to lay down for 3 seconds that move. And Elias's first thought is now gotta stand up, gotta stand up.
If nothing
Doesn't
else,
work.
for years, I didn't want this guy to be a star anymore, and he does not look like a star anymore. He just looks like a weird old dude. He does.
The T-shirt was made backstage with somebody ironing on the letters as well, isn't it? Like the whole thing feels like bizarrely out of place.
He's just not a star anymore. It's the strangest thing. I'm happy about it in a roundabout way, but he's not a star.
Is it ironic that a few years ago he was the one pointing at The Rock and saying, you know, you've left and you come back and you left again? And he's done zero promotion with this entire tag team fight. He turns up. He's the big pop. Lashley has to take all the offense. He's the big pop. He comes in with his weird hair and veiny body, and then he hits the lightning fist.
It was a stupid argument then, and it's an even stupider argument now.
But that Rock, and it was a stupid argument, that Rock came back and they drew the biggest buy rate in the company's history. Yeah. What is this John Cena going to do to bring like eyes to the network or a buy rate or an attendance? This John Cena is probably going to be at WrestleMania in New York. How is he going to fill the stadium like The Rock did with him, that same stadium all those years ago, with this version of his act?
I'll give you a clue.
There you go.
It's me doing the lightning.
I feel like I've just taken a back fist off you.
Well, there you have it. This has been the What Culture Wrestling Roundtable podcast. Let us know your thoughts in the comment section or on Twitter at WhatCultureWWE. And whilst you're there, you can follow us all on Twitter. You can follow Michael Hamflett at
Michael Hamflett.
You can follow Michael Sidgwick at
Sidgwick.
You can follow me at Adam Wilburn. You can follow us all at WhatCultureWWE. And make sure you subscribe to What Culture Wrestling on iTunes for more daily podcasts. My thanks to the Dadley Boyz. Thank you for watching and listening. And we will see you soon.